Today for you, I want to make a really cool dish. It's called moqueca. It's a Brazilian fish stew. And like a lot of fish stews, it has a lot of interesting flavors in it. You get a lot of flavor base going, and then you add the fish. Now, if you wanted to make this dish vegan, you can. All you have to do is leave out the fish. Everything else about it is vegan, so it's actually very easy to adapt. You add the fish, and you can add whatever fish you like. Of course, you can multiply, change, add, subtract, anything you like as far as the ingredients go. If you like some other vegetables better, add those in. If you want to take some out, take them out. If you want to add a little spice or a little less heat or a little more heat, you can certainly do that. This recipe is very adaptable, but I love it because it's got some sort of tropical flavors because it tastes like coconut and lime and cilantro, and it's just a wonderful dish that comes together. So let's get it together and get it going here, and I'll talk about all the ingredients I've got going into it. We're going to use a couple kinds of fish in this stew, but one of the things I like to use is mussels. So before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and just steam up some mussels and have them ready so I can use those in the dish. It just takes a couple of minutes in the steamer and they'll open up and I can start using them. But I just like to get that going, and that way I get some really nice seafood base to work with. Now I may keep a little bit of the liquid that I can put into the stock, but I don't have to. I can just certainly just add the mussels and that's fine too. First things first, before I get started with the rest of it, I'm going to go ahead and put a sauce together to marinate my fish in. And the sauce is going to consist of 4 ingredients. The first is ginger. I'm just going to grind up about a tablespoonful of ginger. And I'm going to take 3 cloves of garlic and go ahead and cut those up and get them ready. I'm going to put them in a bag along with some lime juice, maybe a couple of tablespoons of lime juice, and some coconut oil. Those are going to be the base for my sauce that's going to go on the fish. It'll give it a little more flavor that I think really works with this. So I'll go ahead and take all of that, put it in the bag here. I've already got the lime juice in there. I'm putting my ginger and my garlic in. And I just use a little bit of coconut oil to go in there. And I've got my shrimp ready to go. And I'll put all the stuff inside the bag. So I'm going to do shrimp. I think shrimp is a nice addition to this dish. I'm going to go ahead and use my mussels that I steamed open a couple of minutes ago. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut some fish. Now I've got some cod I'm going to use for this. And you can use really any fish you like. Really, this dish is so flexible. You could use anything you want with it. You could certainly use some kind of octopus if you like, or some other kind of fleshy fish. Or if you like something else, that's good too. So go ahead and slice these guys up, put them in the bag, along with the other ingredient I'm going to use is some squid. I found some calamari that I had, and I'll go ahead and I'll cut that up and put it in here too. So I've got some nice calamari rings I'll put in there. I think this adds a nice body to the dish, and as I said, if you prefer to keep it vegan, or vegetarian for that matter, you could just leave this entire process out and just work with the vegetables. You get the great flavors, but you don't have the fish in that case. So I'll get these together, I'll mix them up in the bag, and I'll let them marinate for about 30 minutes. What I want is to get some of that flavor in there. The lime will start to cure it a little bit, cook it just a little bit, sort of ceviche style. And then the rest of it, the coconut oil and the garlic and the ginger will really add some flavor to it, so it gives it a little bit of depth of flavor. The important thing about this particular dish is you want a very deep flavor in the whole thing. You're going to have sort of the umami thing going on. We have a little bit of sweet, a little bit of salty, a little bit of tangy. And all of those things are going to come together to produce a really nice dish. And now it's on to preparation of the vegetables in the stock. I'm going to use these baby zucchini in my dish. I like the baby zucchini. They're really nice. They're easy to work with. You could use full-size zucchini. You could use squash. You could use really any vegetables you like. This dish, again, so flexible. If you like a particular vegetable that you think will hold up in a soup, you can certainly use it. So I'm going to go ahead and just dice these up into chunks, basically, so that I've got them ready to go. Then I'm going to take some plantains. I like plantains in mine. It just gives it a little earthiness and a little body. Plantains are like bananas if you've never seen them. They've got a little bit more texture to them, and they don't break down the same way. You have to cook them. You can't eat them raw, but they're really, really good. You find them a lot in Latin cooking, and they're really amazing. So all you have to do is just peel them like a banana. Sometimes they're a little hard. You want to try and get them a little more brown if you can. That gives them a little bit of softness, and it makes them a little bit better in cooking. But any texture works. So I'm going to go ahead and just peel these off, and then I will slice them up. So I've got 2 of them here. I'm just going to peel it off. Sometimes you get a little brown spot on the outside. You can just kind of cut those off if you find them that way, but no big deal. And then I'll just go ahead and just dice these guys up into big-sized chunks that I can put in my stew. Now, I'm not going to lie, this dish takes a long time to put together. It's really kind of complicated and it takes a little effort, but it is well worth your time. It just has to layer the flavors together and you get everything coming out really nice. So if you take your time and do it right, it's worth it. This is why I like to do it on like a Saturday or something, because it works out well to spend the time on it and actually not have to kind of rush through making dinner. So I'm going to use this big Dutch oven that I've got. It's really nice because I can fill it, use it, and serve it in this dish, and it looks really nice at the end. Now you can use really any pot you have. It doesn't really have to look this nice. You could use just a deep pot that you've got. Anything will work as long as you can create the stew in it. Now what I put in it to start with is a little bit of coconut oil and a little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon of each. And I get those nice and hot, and that will allow me then to put in my base ingredients. Like most dishes, you want to create a base flavor before you start adding other things into it. So it's important to get this nice and hot and then start adding things in. So I'll go ahead and give that a minute or two to just start to heat up. And this is why I'd say it takes a little time, because everything just takes a little time to build the flavors. Once this is nice and hot, I'll stir it around and I'll start putting my ingredients in here. And this is where my base flavor comes from. I'm going to go ahead and put in my onions, my ginger, my garlic. And really, this is kind of an eyeball thing. It's maybe 4 cloves of garlic, maybe a tablespoon or so of ginger, about 1 onion, and that's where I'm going to start my flavoring coming from. I'll just start stir frying those, pan frying them to get them so they saute and they start to give up their flavors. You start to smell it in just a few moments after you put it in the stove, and you really start to smell it, and it starts to get this wonderful sort of thing going. Then as soon as it starts to get a little bit aromatic, I'm going to add my onions. I have about 1 medium-sized onion that I'm going to put in here. I've sliced it up into thin slices, and then I'm going to use in here. And I'm just going to go ahead and stir that around and start to cook it a little bit. I want to start getting some flavors coming into it, get the onion a little bit soft, and start to get something going. So the idea is to create this base with these ingredients to just sort of layer a flavor in here. This is your base flavor that's going to start everything off. So you stir it around for a while, kind of get it going a little bit. And once you start to see them start to change color just a little bit, you're ready to move on to the next step. So it takes a few minutes to get to here. Now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of sweet paprika. Now you could add spice if you want, a little more heat if you want to. You could add red pepper flakes. You could add something else if you want. I like the sweet paprika because it gives it a nice body and adds a little something to it. Now I'm going to add in about 1 bell pepper. I've got a piece of an orange bell pepper I had left and most of a red pepper that I had left from a salad we made a few days ago. But I'll go ahead and put these in here and start pan frying those too. And that starts to really mix the flavor in. You're starting to meld more flavors in there. You want the onions to already be cooked, but now I'm adding the bell peppers to give it a little bit more richness and depth to the flavor, plus of course the paprika. Once it reaches a point that looks like this takes between 5 and 10 minutes to get it to here. You're on about medium heat. You get it to a nice texture. And now I'm going to add 1 can of tomato chunks, just crushed tomatoes. It's got a little bit of the liquid in there and it's got the tomatoes, and that's going to start to give me the next level to the body here. So I've already got the one flavor going, now I'm adding the tomatoes to it. I want to put a little bit of salt and pepper in here just to give it a little bit more flavor, just to season it just right, but nothing more than that. Again, if you want a little more flavor, you could add something else here, but this is where I like to just kind of leave it sort of even, right? It's just a nice flavor. There's nothing I'm really adding to it at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a little stir, get it ready, and as soon as I think I've got it all incorporated, I can go ahead and add some potatoes. Now, what I like to do is take about 1 sweet potato and dice it up. I peel it and dice it and then put it in here. And what that does, the sweet potato gives me a little more texture. It gives me that nice body. Now, if you like other kinds of potatoes, you want some kind of russet potato, or maybe even a purple potato, you could certainly put that in here instead, or in addition to. It's really up to you what you like in here, but I think the potato adds something to it because it gives it a little bit more complexity. So you got more textures going on when you finish with the dish. So go ahead and get those ready. Once I've got them in there and I've got them all stirred in, I'm going to go ahead and lid it up. Now I noticed that in this case, it looks like there's not quite enough liquid to really steam it. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of my vegetable stock. I'm going to add vegetable stock later. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a splash in here now, just to make sure there's enough liquid to really get these steamed up and cooking nicely. So I'll just mix that in a little bit, then I'll put the lid on it, and I'll wait about 10 minutes before I come back and continue. All right, we've been 10 minutes. Now we're going to open it up and see how it looks. And you can see that the potatoes have cooked up nicely. Looks like they're coming together. When you open it up, the smell is just amazing because you've got the onions and the peppers and the potatoes and all these things coming together. And plus, of course, the paprika you have in there that really gets it going. So I'm just going to give it a little stir, see how it's going. I can see that these are nice and soft. I'm going to pull one out quickly and just verify that they're cooked enough where I can work with it. You want them to be what you would think of as al dente, right? Where they're just a little bit hard, but they come apart easily because you're going to cook them some more, but you just want to make sure that you're not doing too much to them. You don't want to overcook them at this point, but you also don't want them to be hard. So it's important just to make sure that you've got them in the right space right here. So that's cooked enough and we'll move on. And now it's time to put the plantains in. So I've got these beautiful plantains that I've cut up into chunks, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in here. And again, I just want to get them in and spread them around. It's going to take a little time for them to cook, but I want to make sure that I get that started so they can start cooking. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the zucchini at the same time because the zucchini takes about the same amount of time as the plantains do. So it's going to be about another 5 to 7 minutes to get those cooked. So I'll put them in, I'll put my zucchini in that I've chopped up, and I'll be ready to go. Again, all I'm going to do is just make sure that it's evenly distributed in the pan here, lid it up and let it cook for about 5 minutes. And if I think again that it doesn't have quite enough liquid to cook it, because you do want them to steam a little bit too, I'll add a little bit more of my vegetable stock. I'm going to add vegetable stock later anyway, but I want to make sure that I have enough liquid in here now to make sure everything cooks. And so here we are about 5 minutes later, and it smells really good again. I'm starting to smell it come through, and I'm ready to take the lid off and see how it's doing. So I think at this point, we're pretty much ready to finish off the dish. We're at a point where we've cooked for about 15 or 20 minutes now to kind of get it to this point, and now I'm ready to take the lid off and see how it came together. And you can see that everything's kind of cooked up in there a little bit. You got your nice steamed parts on the top, and everything kind of looks really nice. I'm going to go ahead and give it a stir and just make sure everything's mixed up. I'm going to kind of test these guys along the way just to see if they're soft, and I can see that they are, so I'm good there. And now I'm ready for the final couple of steps. And the last couple of steps are to go ahead and add my fish. Now, if you want to skip the fish, just skip this step entirely. You can still do the rest of it and just skip this step. But I think this one works well since it is a fish stew after all. I put my fish in that I've been marinating, and I go ahead and spread it around in the pan. And once it's spread out, then I'm going to add my final 2 ingredients. Well, final 2 until I get to the finishing touches, of course, but I'll go ahead and get those last 2 ingredients in there. The first one is a coconut milk. I like the light coconut milk. I think it has the great flavor, but it just doesn't have all the fat. So I put the light coconut milk in. 1 can is fine for this amount of stock. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my vegetable stock. Now I use about a cup in total of vegetable stock. Now I like to season it with a little bouillon. I'm using like one of these store-bought canisters of vegetable stock, but I put a little bit of the actual stock that's a little bit heavier and got a little bit more flavor into it, just to give it a little bit more something. But you want about a cup of it in there. And all I want to do at this point is just kind of stir it together, make sure that everything kind of comes together so it's got one consistent texture all the way through, so you don't have coconut milk all in one place. It kind of goes all the way through. And again, once I've reached this point, I'm going to lid it up one more time for just a couple of minutes, and I'm going to let it cook. And then once it's cooked through for about 3-4 minutes or so, I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off and I'll be ready to go. So here we are. This is basically the final dish. You can see how it comes together, and the smell is outstanding. It just has this wonderful flavor, this aroma. And I like to just check it and make sure everything's kind of done. I check my fish to make sure that nothing's underdone. But again, whether you use fish or not, you need to do this step just to help build the flavors and layer them in there. So you go ahead and take your fish, and now I'm ready. I'm going to add about a cup or so of lime juice. I think this is one of the finishing touches that really makes this dish, because it's got the coconut, the lime, and the tomato are really your base. and that's the liquid you've got, and then the vegetable stock just adds something to it. And now I just go ahead and mix it up and let it simmer for a couple of more minutes, just like this. Don't need to do anything else to it other than that. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to go ahead and garnish it. And I think the garnish is nice because it makes it look great, and it also adds some additional flavor to it. And the two pieces of garnish I like to use are green onions, scallions if you will, and cilantro. And I like to use rather a lot of the cilantro because I think the cilantro just adds an earthiness to it that you can't get any other way, and you really can't beat it. So I'll just finish stirring it up, let it simmer, and then I'll go ahead and add my two toppings, and I'm good to go. So here we are getting the green onions and the cilantro on top. Now you have this beautiful dish that's suitable for serving. I can take this out, put it on the table, put a spoon in it, and everyone can enjoy it. Now I like to serve it with jasmine rice. I think it's the perfect accompaniment to it, but if you prefer, you could serve it with bread or something else. But it's a wonderful dish that I hope you try out and enjoy.